There's a new story from the Wall Street Journal that is truly a shocking story and is getting undercovered, of course, by a lot of folks in the mainstream. Everyone should be picking up on it because it's a kind of crazy story. Here's the story from the Wall Street Journal. Quote, a friend of Christine Blasey Ford told FBI investigators that she felt pressured by Dr. Ford's allies to revisit her initial statement that she knew nothing about an alleged sexual assault by a teenage Brett Kavanaugh, which she later updated to say she believed but couldn't corroborate Dr. Ford's accounts, according to people familiar with the matter. Let me be clear what that means. That means that people close to Christine Blasey Ford called up Leland Kaiser, who was the only witness that essentially Ford brought forth, and who had denied that she knew anything about the party or knew Brett Kavanaugh at all. And Ford's people called up Kaiser and tried to get her to change her story. They pressured her to change her story in order to go after Brett Kavanaugh. That's fully crazy. And if it happened on the other side, if it was Brett Kavanaugh calling people up saying, I need you to change your story and say that you denied it, people would be saying, wow, that guy is evil. Okay, like that to try and pressure somebody to change a story in order to convict someone, either in the court of public opinion or in court, may in fact be criminal activity, right? I mean, to get somebody to change their story for the FBI, that's putting pressure on an actual witness. That's witness tampering, maybe. Okay, so that's pretty dicey stuff. Here's what the story says. Leland Kaiser, who Dr. Ford has said was present at the gathering where she was allegedly assaulted in the 1980s, told investigators that Monica McLean, a retired FBI agent and a friend of Dr. Ford's, had urged her to clarify her statement, the people said. Now, it is worth noting that Monica McLean has only come up in one other context in this case so far. So it turns out that Monica McLean went to Ford's actual testimony. Why else do we know Monica McLean's name? Monica McLean was the woman who was mentioned by Christine Blasey Ford's ex-boyfriend in his letter when he said that Christine Blasey Ford trained somebody to pass a polygraph. That would have been Monica McLean. Monica McLean, when she was trying out for a job with the federal government, she then said that had never happened. It also turns out that Monica McLean is probably the quote-unquote beach friend that Christine Blasey Ford was talking about who urged her to approach Democrats. So Monica McLean, who's a Democratic activist, was involved in this thing basically from inception. The statement to the FBI offers a glimpse into how Dr. Ford's allies were working behind the scenes to lobby old classmates to bolster their versions of the alleged incident, as were Judge Kavanaugh's. Judge Kavanaugh, whose Supreme Court nomination will be debated in the Senate Friday, has denied the allegations of sexual misconduct. On Thursday, a day after sending to the White House the report on its investigation into the allegations against Judge Kavanaugh, the FBI sent the White House and Senate an additional package of information that included text messages from Ms. McLean to Ms. Kaiser, according to a person familiar with the matter. Ms. McLean's lawyer, David Loffman, said in a statement, quote, any notion or claim that Ms. McLean pressured Leland Kaiser to alter Ms. Kaiser's account of what she recalled concerning the alleged incident between Dr. Ford and Brett Kavanaugh is absolutely false. Ms. Kaiser's lawyer on September 23rd said in a letter to the Senate Judiciary Committee she had no recollection of attending a party with Judge Kavanaugh. That same day, she told the Washington Post she believed Dr. Ford. On September 29th, 2 days after Dr. Ford and the judge testified before the Senate Judiciary Committee, Ms. Kaiser's attorney sent a letter to the panel saying his client wasn't refuting Dr. Ford's accounts and that she believed it but couldn't corroborate it. A person close to the former classmates said it was her understanding that mutual friends of Dr. Ford and Ms. Kaiser, including Ms. McLean, had contacted Ms. Kaiser after her initial statement to warn her that her statement was being used by Republicans to rebut the allegations against Judge Kavanaugh. The friends told Ms. Kaiser that if she had intended to say she didn't remember the party, not that it had never happened, she should clarify her statement, the person said, adding that the friends had not, in fact, pressured Ms. Kaiser. No, it wasn't any pressure at all. So, good stuff happening there from the politically oriented legal team and friends of Christine Blasey Ford. This is not obviously good for her account. And obviously Chuck Grassley is taking this stuff very seriously. So Chuck Grassley, who is the head of the Senate Judiciary Committee on behalf of the Republicans, he actually sent a letter to Christine Blasey Ford's legal team. And this letter is pretty explosive stuff for Christine Blasey Ford. He basically said, why aren't you turning over any of your records? You testified about your psychiatrist's records, and then you won't turn them over to us. You'll show them to the Washington Post, but you won't show them to us. You testified about a bunch of material that you won't turn over to us. So why? Here's what Chuck Grassley wrote to Christine Blasey Ford's lawyers. Quote, you have repeatedly refused to produce this evidence to the Senate. In doing so, you are preventing the Senate from considering the evidence most crucial to Dr. Ford's allegations. I don't know what other inference we should draw from your refusal, but that the withheld evidence does not support Dr. Ford's allegations in quite the way you have claimed. I urge you once again, now for the third time in writing, to turn over the therapy notes, polygraph materials, and communications with the Washington Post that Dr. Ford has relied upon as evidence. And here's where it starts to get real dicey for legal team Ford. In addition to the evidence I requested in my October 2nd letter, in light of recently uncovered information, please turn over records and descriptions of direct or indirect communications between Dr. Ford or her representatives and any of the following. 1. U.S. senators or their staffs, particularly the offices of Senators Feinstein and Hirono. In other words, were you coordinating with Democrats in order to trot out a particular PR line? 2. The alleged witnesses identified by Dr. Ford, Leland Kaiser, Mark Judge, and Patrick Smith. In other words, we think that you've been corresponding with witnesses, including Leland Kaiser, about what they ought to be saying on this. And 3, Debbie Ramirez, Julie Swetnick, or their representatives. In other words, were you coordinating with other people making allegations against Judge Kavanaugh? Chuck Grassley does not actually release that letter unless he's got something in his back pocket. Okay, Chuck Grassley is a very cautious senator. And this is not a guy who's going to go out there on a ledge and then suggest that all this is some giant conspiracy without some evidence. If he is, then that's inappropriate. So we will see what arises from all of that. And so chaos has now taken over the Senate buildings. They've already set up barricades outside the Senate because of protesters that are expected tomorrow. I will note something. It is pretty amazing. It's pretty amazing that we've reached this point in American public life with regard to Supreme Court seats. This did, in fact, start with the Democratic left that decided that the court was a tool for the promulgation of public policy and not merely an impartial arbiter of constitutional meaning. The reason that the stakes are so high is because the court became something it never was before during the Warren era and afterward. And that was an actual political institution dedicated to a specific set of policy goals. The reason people care about the Supreme Court, the reason that the people think that the Supreme Court matters, is because of things like Roe v. Wade, when the court decided that it was going to make national policy on the basis of left-wing viewpoints, having nothing to do with the Constitution. And the left believed that the court was going to be its final bastion of leftism. No matter what happened, they could always count on the court to step in and defend leftist policy priorities. And for a long time, that was basically correct. And now it turns out that when Republicans want to restore the judiciary to its proper role, namely reading the Constitution as it is written, as it was meant, then the left says, wait, hold up a second. That's why people are so passionate. Because let's face it, nobody cares about the local dog catcher's race. None of this would have happened if we were talking about a branch of government, like a bureaucratic branch of government. Nobody would have cared about that. They care about the Supreme Court because they think the Supreme Court is important. But the only reason people think the Supreme Court is important is because the left has turned it into a political tool and has used it as a club to beat senseless people who actually believe in the text of the Constitution for the last 50-odd years. I wrote my entire Harvard Law School third-year paper on the idea that judicial review should be significantly curtailed because the founders never intended for the Supreme Court to be a superior political branch, and yet that's exactly what's happened.